here's what got me on, and I got osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis, and it's settled up in my thumb that I write with. And that chart thing, I've had to, like when we came to class last time, he started saying the zeros don't work. You had to put in 1 day. I had my chart finished and already taken pictures of every page, and all I needed to do was, submit them. And now I got to go back and use whiteout or else redraw the thing. I'm not sure, and change all the zeros and add in 1 day. So I got to do that by tonight. I'm like, yeah. And my thumb is like, I don't know if I can hire somebody to write for me or what. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's not a bad idea. Yeah, find somebody to, or trade them something else you'll do for them or something,
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it put up on that Drario thing and then just leave the numbers into where I can just do it in pencil, and then that way I can go back, change and fix.
An idea. I did it. I just drew it out because I'm on that Drario thing. I'm so slow. I'm like, I can draw it so much quicker,
How many else feel that way? No, everybody feels that way right now. It's not an easy task. It's massive compared to what you've had to do. Because I think the longest we did before were about 20. And while doing a 21 gets you the idea, you can give proof of concept, it really takes you doing a major project before you figure this out. So how many still have significant work to do before midnight tonight? All right, so I'm not going to grade until 6 p.m. tomorrow. So if you have it in by 5 o'clock tomorrow.
Thank you, sir.
That will, I'll grade what's there at the time. You have to be consistent about this. My watch is going off telling me it's time to teach, and I already know that. So yeah, we're good. So I would ask you what you're going to be doing this weekend, but I kind of already know in a bad way. But it's pretty straightforward what you got to do at this point. You got to get the critical path turned in through the diagram, and then you need to be working on your spreadsheet, getting that moving. Some of you might find the spreadsheet actually easier than the critical path set up on it. You'd be surprised at that. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to share my screen here so that everybody can see what we're doing right now, and I want to talk about the next steps. I'm just going to delete everything out. Okay, so.
Hey, Dr. Bailey.
Yes.
I just want to make sure you got record on. You're gonna put this.
Got record on.
Okay.
Red button right there at the top. So
okay, good.
I made sure.
These are good to go back and look at, but if you don't record them, then
I don't record it. It doesn't help. And what was it? Monday's class, I ended up with like 1.5 minutes of class. That did not work. So we talked about, you have these dates established, and it really doesn't matter how you got these dates. If you're putting in manually or if you're doing the calculation through Workday. But what I want to talk about here is how you go about creating the first box out here. So what steps do you have to go through to do that? Let's make a list of them. And I'm going to put that little list to the left or to the right of that where we're going to be working. So what's the first thing we want to know about this date? Because that's the column here, this date. And what we're trying to do is get to see if that date needs to turn colors.
Would you use a workday function to see whether it's a holiday or a weekend and so on?
Well, you should have already done that with the second one. So we'll know that end date right there is a work day. Right? Because we know workday INT gives us that information. Giving 2 dates, it will be able to, and the duration of the task, it will be able to tell you the end date of the projected end date of the task. So what's the first step I have to do? What are the things that we need to do? So this is that incremental thinking that I've been talking about. Well, you're going to compare the 4th of November, or you're going to compare the start date and the end date. So what are you comparing them to?
The dates of the actual task.
Okay.
And not.
So what is it that we want to know?
If those dates actually fall into that time period.
Right. So we want to know if the 4th of November falls between the 4th of November and the 5th of November. Yes? Y'all get that? But to articulate that is not an easy thing. Why? Normally, we're really good at doing 2 things. Comparing one thing to another thing. In this case, you're comparing 3 things. And that level of complexity oftentimes causes us to get lost. So it reminds me, when I was in high school and in college, I played chess and played it competitively. And the early chess games would come out and I would play them for a little while until I got so I could beat them. And what you soon discovered was that the computer was thinking so many steps ahead. So if you learn to think one more step ahead of the computer, literally one more step, maybe it was thinking 5, 3, 5, 7, even 11 last time I think I did it. Sorry about that. If you could think 12 steps ahead in the process, you would beat the computer every time. Training yourself to think that far in advance with multiple possibilities is taxing, and it's not something that we're used to doing. Programmers do it. Chess masters do it. Managers need to be able to do this. Us doing the flow charts, that process breakdown, doing the peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or you're going out and purchasing something. All of that was about breaking down the something very large and complex. Some of you really struggled with that, into small, recognizable, incremental steps that can be reproduced by somebody else. The point of a procedure is so that somebody can look at it, say, oh, I have this, and go do exactly what you did when you did it. Exactly. Matter of fact, that's a test in real life. When you write a process or procedure down, you go out and you give that process to someone else and said, here you go, and you don't give any directions. I need you to go do this. Here's how. And see what questions they come back with. Invariably, they will, because even if you're good at this, you're going to leave steps out. You just assume certain things. If you're bad at it, you're going to know it right away. And you need to go back and work on it some more. So let's break this down into smaller tasks. We've got to compare 3 things, but let's compare 2 things, one at a time. So, because there's 2 comparisons going on, right? You're going to compare the date in that column right here, in this column, to the early start date, to the early start date or the late start date. And I don't know why this is ESD or EFD, early start and early finish. You're going to compare, so you're going to determine if it's going on. So the first comparison you're going to do is you want to know, let's just write it out, is, and you can actually go K5 greater than or equal to, and it's going to be O3, right? Comparing two cells. And you can actually do that check. Now, in fact, I oftentimes will write formulas and I'll do these little bitty ones and I'll go do it first and see if this comes back true or not. So you can actually go in, and I think that will work. Yeah, it'll come back and tell you if it's true or not. So it's equal to or greater than. So in that case, if it's true, we want to be able to put an X on this part, right? So what's the other equation we want to write? What's the other comparison we want to do? So in this first one, we were comparing those two cells. What's the other comparison I want to do? I'm sorry? Yeah, so you're going to want to, instead of this being up there, you can see it, it's K5, you're going to want to compare it to L5 for the same date. So you can come right here and you can rewrite this again, so you can go equals, and we said L5, I think that's right. And is it less than or equal to that date? Did I do it right or do it wrong? 5.
I think actually in the first one you used less than instead of more than on the Q5.
So which is larger? And this is why you do it this way. You work out the logic one statement at a time. If you write this in a big long equation, you go, I don't know if this is right or not. But if you do it this way, you know all the symbols are lining up, they're coming out correct. Now you have it, and then you can put this in a wrapper and inside of an if statement and make it do what you want it to do. Because if you get into an if statement, you can do just about anything you want to in Excel. So the key is to get it worked out. So we do the test, it's not equal to one another. So we want to see if L5 is larger than. No, it's going to be less than. It's got to be less than. Am I doing that wrong? There we go. Okay, so we know that these two true statements are correct now. They're working. Got the logic right. It's confusing when you're working on that logic. Equal, greater than, less than. Who struggles with that? Yeah, we all do. Okay. And unless you're doing this every single day, and I've done that, I've done this for years, and I get so I can just blow through this, and it's really simple. But when you get out of the habit of doing it all the time, this gets to be burdensome. And your mind wants to focus on the other task. And so you bring it back, work out the two little equations. Now what we want to do is stick those two equations into an and statement. What does an and statement do for us? in an and statement, if both statements are true, what does it mean? How does the and statement read? If one of the statements is false in an and statement, what's the overall condition of the and statement? It's false. If both are true, it is true. And that's what you're looking for. In this case, you're looking for both to be true.
Only if both are true.
Yeah, it's not critical path. It's just in the task. Okay. So that's how you're doing this. So now you've got this one working. So now you come up and let's just start playing with the equation a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and copy one of these. Okay, so now we're going to go right here. Oops, escape. Right here we go equals. And what we're going to do is put in an and statement. Actually, just and. And then it says put in your logic statements. So oftentimes what I'll do is I'll put in a closed paren. It won't let me save it here. I'll have to put something is 1 is equal to 1. Okay, so now I can go over here and I can copy this. I'll cut it. Click off, come back to here, and replace this one. Got 1 in there. You got to take the equal sign out. And it's returning true. Now we'll go get the second one. Do the same thing. Now you come back up to the and statement, you put a comma, and you put the additional statement that you've already proven that works in there. And you hit another enter. So now I've got, it's testing both of those in the same cell. Now you could set up 2 columns, one checking the first one, one checking the next one, and then you write an if statement and say if both of those are true, then you're good. You can actually do this in a new command that they have out there in Excel called an ifs with an S statement on the end of it. But and makes sense right here. So you actually know. So if and is true, you want to put an X on it. So how do we do that? Yeah, but how do we make it fit an X? It's not an X, it's just saying true right now. Could leave it true. That's an option. Because if you drag this out, at some point it ought to turn false.
It's a conditional formatting, right?
Yeah, so you can see right next one it turns false. So how do I insert, how do I get Excel to do something else when I'm getting a
So conditional formatting?
No, thinking too hard. Good idea, but using the if statement. So if this is true, then, that's why it's so nice, even if, there's always a then to an if. If then, you do X, and if that's not true, then you do Y. You have an option. So you actually have a way to set up a fork in it. So to put a fork in this one, we're going to go, okay, I'm not as funny as I sound sometimes. So if, have to open up parentheses, we have to have a closed parenthesis, but you have 2 commas instead of an if statement, and I'm going to return that. And notice that it now says 0. And the reason it says 0 is because there's nothing in the then statement or the alternate. So the way to fix that is I can tell it for the not then statement, which means if it's the opposite of, we should be able to do that. No, I think it's single quotes. No, it's double quotes. different programming languages has it different ways. There we go. Okay, so this is still true. Okay. And now we're going to come back and we're going to say, if it's true, we're going to go double quote, put an X or Z, or whatever you want to use. Double quote. Now, we have conditional formatting on this one already, and I'm going to take that off. Clear rules. Okay, so voila, it puts an X on it. But there's a problem here. Who knows what the problem is here? There's a hint on the screen. What's the problem? Well, you got these zeros out here, right? Why are those zeros out there?
Because you didn't lock your columns and rows in the formula.
Who said that? Hunter? Smart man. Smart man. That's exactly what it is. You need to carefully lock your columns and your rows. And if you don't know which ones to lock, do them selectively. You can lock the column, row, whatever you want to do with this. So let's talk about each one of these. We want them to look at the dates up here, right? This is on a row. So we're going to want to lock this row in this equation, and this row is called 3. Doesn't matter what the letter is in front of it. So you come over and you go, okay, I want to lock 3, and you put a $sign right in front of 3. Okay, now that locks in them looking up here. So when I drag this down, this row, this column here, right here, the first column, it's still going to be looking up on row 3 for the answer. Yes, we get that? I'll go over it again. If you don't understand, say I don't get that, or just shake your head and I'll go over it again. All right, so you want to lock the row or the column that you're working in. And so since all the dates on this part of the equation go across the page, we're going to lock that row, which that is numbered. You come to the end of it and you look over here and that's 3, because all the dates are located right there. Makes sense, right? Now, by contrast, all the early start dates are in this column, K, and the end ones are in L. And so you go in and you do the same thing. You lock K and L. You only lock what you need. If you lock too much, it gets locked into a particular cell, and that's not what we want in this case. There are appropriate times to do that. So we're going to go L right here, $sign in front of L, and a $sign in front of K. And we hit an enter. Now when I go to drag this, still a problem in here, but we're working it. Okay, now, does it seem right? Does it look like something's wrong? So this is where your brain kicks in. You've been fiddling with the software user. Now you use your brain to see, is the computer just being stupid or is it right? Okay, and so how would I test the computer in this case? That's what you're doing, testing the computer. Even though it's your program, you're testing the computer. Is it right or is it wrong? There's a logic problem. All of these x's can't be here. Let's do the first check. 11.4 and 11.5, definitely between this and that one's definitely in range. But this one's in range too. Didn't work. 5, that one's not in range. And 8, that one's in range. This one's not in range, and this one's not in range. What's going on? How do you go and investigate this? Go back to those short little logic steps. And you figure out what's wrong. And you make it work where you can look at it and you can say, yep, that should be between these two data. Programming wise, this is as simple as it gets because you have a direct way to test every line that you're doing. So you can verify. So what's wrong here is the greater than equals things. I've changed them around right before I did this. Didn't know if you saw it. I've turned them around and they're wrong. So you've got to go and correct them. But once you correct those, then who was my guy who was talking about conditional formatting? Who was saying that? Now's the time. Okay, Cade was saying that. So now you go and you put in your conditional formatting, you highlight the range. This is a range right here. This gray area, you'll be on out there. Highlight it, do the conditional formatting, change the background of the color of the cell, and you change the color of the font to the same thing, and suddenly what you have, only if it has an X in it, you change it and you make it work. I put borders around this so that I get a space, put a heavy border, white or yellow border. What that does is it gives me these little checkerboard effects. Just helps the eye to see what's there. So that's how you do this. That part's not hard. It takes a little bit of brain power up front, and then it's just copy, paste, left, right, bottom. Your copy and paste ought to work on this once you get your logic correctly set up. So this is an if-then statement with an and statement on the inside with 2 tests inside the and statement. Questions? All right. That's where I want you to have this for Monday.
So to fix this, you would change that L5 and be less than equal to.
You got to go in and play around with the greater than and less than. That's where the error is. Are we good? Everybody clear on what you have to do? You don't have to turn this in Monday, but we're going to be back in class. And if you're not staying up with me on this, next week you're going to get buried because there's just too much to catch up on. It's like doing, I kept saying, do the critical path, do the critical path, do the critical path, because I knew it was a big task. We're doing this incrementally in class because I also want you to learn some functions of Excel, and we're going to add to this, okay? And you need to fill in the steps on the list that are critical paths that you've identified. Any other questions? Guys, I want you to have an amazing but safe weekend. The virus is getting bad again. Stay close to home. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.
So I have done my critical path 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And no, you're